It's another week and another brand new episode here on the Granny Panty Podcast. I'm your host, RubyLynne. Before you go much further, make sure you hit that subscribe and tap the bell because you don't want to miss an episode. If you'd like to follow me, your host, you can go to rubylynne.info, where it's all things Ruby. I'm excited to learn more about my guest this week. He's been in the industry longer than I had imagined, and he was very methodical about wanting to do the industry. He took his background in graphic design, film, and gaming and transferred it over to the adult industry, and he's been very successful. So help me welcome Leo Weiss. Leo, I'm so excited to have you on the show this week. Thanks for making the time to be here.
No, of course. Again, my pleasure to be here. Excited to be here and to get to know you and for you to get to know me and for us to have a great conversation.
Yes, I was super excited to actually just chat with you briefly the last time I was in LA. And I hear that you have some amazing experience, and I can't wait to learn about it. So I always like to start off and
life has been a little bit interesting.
Introduce yourself.
So my name is Leo Weiss. I am a performer in the adult entertainment industry. I've been doing this for about 5 years. The first couple were a little weird because of COVID years, but for 3 years now, I've been shooting in the mainstream world of the adult entertainment industry. And I don't know how deep into the weeds we want to go about my background before this, but we'll probably get there eventually just through casual conversation.
So yeah, COVID. You were a COVID baby, I guess.
Yeah, but it wasn't the plan. It wasn't like, I know a lot of people that came in during COVID was because COVID came and it messed up their job and so forth. For me, it was just unfortunate timing because I was actually planning to get into the industry before COVID was a thing. I'd been spending a couple years kind of laying the foundation, figuring it out. It just so happened that the timing of when I decided to go full time and start doing this was the same time that COVID happened. I was already 1 foot in this industry. I was already starting to shoot content and self-produce. And there was a situation at my former employment where there was company restructuring at the top C level. And after surviving multiple rounds, eventually got to a point where they laid me off because they thought that they didn't understand why I was getting paid what I was getting paid over there. So they thought that they were going to replace me and outsource my job to a complete design firm in the Philippines. But at that point, I was already 1 foot in the adult entertainment industry anyway. So that was where I was going to go regardless. And it just so happened that about a month after I got laid off, COVID happened. So I was in the process of moving down to LA to get started full time in the adult entertainment, and COVID.
Yeah, that same kind of thing happened to me because I got started right before COVID, and then boom, COVID happened.
Right.
And my job brought me home. So it was like this beautiful marriage. Oh, okay. Now I'm working from home and I can do my side hustle, which eventually turned into a full-time hustle. Same for you, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, it was a little bit scary at first though, as a new performer getting into the industry right at the time when everything shut down and everyone's scared to touch each other, and I know I know a lot of people are missing a lot of people miss COVID because at the time when everyone's home and then they were getting like, stimulus checks and stuff like that,
Yes.
OnlyFans was popping off. Like people were making crazy money. But as a new performer that had nobody to work with because I was brand new in an era where nobody wants to touch each other because COVID was a thing, I was just sitting there watching everyone else celebrate their success. And I'm like, one day
You're like the little shy kid on the playground, watching everyone else have fun. It's like, dang it. So Tell us what your former uh, job was. It sounds like it was in tech.
Yeah. So I try not to get too specific about it just because it gets into my it's really easy to figure out who I am when like my real name and all that stuff. But I was a graphic designer in the video game industry. I worked for a major video game publisher. It's definitely a recognizable video game publisher if you're like in the world of video games. And at this point, it's kind of like you've seen my work. You've just had no idea you've seen it out there somewhere. But yeah, I was a production designer, and yeah, I was in the industry for 6.5 years before transitioning off and doing this now. So.
Reminds
uh,
me of Jay's Playhouse, because he
Oh yes,
started
yes.
in gaming and I always tease him about he made his fortunes and then became a photographer.
No, no, we've talked about that a bit too. Just we've commiserated about our, our war stories from the industry days.
I can only imagine, like the tech world, it's very stressful, I hear. But I think that there seems to be a fair amount of folks that do transition from the gaming tech world to the adult world. And I have to imagine that with all that tech knowledge, as far as editing and all of that, it's kind of a natural transition, I guess, would you say?
Yeah, I think, how do I put this? I don't know if necessarily tech background for people is a good transition, but my design background is sort of where that came from,
There you
right?
go. There you go.
Um, and the whole thing is it's kind of like a weird circle in the sense of like the reason I got into design in the first place is because of my passion in film and filmmaking. And design was supposed to be just a supplement so that I can get better at filmmaking by being able to make designs and graphics and stuff for videos. But then, when it came to looking for work, it was easier for me to find work as a designer than as an editor or as a filmer.
Hmm.
Because I didn't live in the entertainment industry. Like I didn't live here in Hollywood, LA. I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area, so like there is a market for film and filmmaking, but it's not as robust as it is down here. So it was easier for me to become a designer than it was to be a filmmaker. And then, but the kind of the reason I got into doing adult content in the first place was
Hmm.
because after years of doing design work, I still realized it didn't really quite scratch the itch, right? Like I come home from a long day of work and I have to spend all my brain power continuously keeping my design skills sharp, but it didn't feel satisfied the way that I used to feel when I used to make like skate videos with my friends and I used to make films and edits and things like that. So a lot of it was me trying to figure out how do I get back into creating film for a living? How do I make film be profitable? And there's $0 in making skate videos, but there's money in adult content.
Yeah. So, how did you decide you wanted to be an adult content? Did you know a performer or were you a consumer of adult content? How did you decide?
I think we're all consumers of adult content. Best way I try to explain it to people at times, it's like the full story of it is like you seen the movie Slumdog Millionaire, where it's
Yeah,
like a
long
series of
time
just
ago.
unrelated events throughout his life, and then there's that one moment where you're like, "Oh, all the stuff I went through, it amounts to this." That's kind of that, but without giving you my entire life story, I'll give you the very short version of it. Um, I had the background in film from my younger days, from skateboarding, wrestling, and things like that. I taught myself how to film. I taught myself how to edit, and I really loved doing that. I used to spend a ton of time doing it. Then, as I mentioned, after I graduated from college, I went back and took some classes in graphic design and learned some design skills and just tone up all my art and creativity. Um, I ended up working as a designer. Then I started working in the video game industry. And at that point, I moved to San Francisco. I was living in the city. And having gotten out of a relationship and so forth, I was like, this was still when Tinder was actually useful, right? So it was kind of like, hey, let me have my man whore phase. So I'm out enjoying my life, and I start hooking up with a couple of women who were making comments that like I remember one woman in particular in the middle of us having sex, she's just pretty much like, oh my god, this is like a porno, this is like being in a porno, and she's like having the time of her life, right? and I meet a couple other women, and they make some comments about this, like, hey, you're pretty good at this whole sex thing. So I start asking, kind of like, do you think I could do porn? And they're like, yeah, of course, you're a good looking guy. I'm above average in size. I have good stamina, all this other stuff. So that kind of started getting the possibility of being a performer in my head.
Yeah.
But I ended up going to my first AVN in 2018,
Okay.
and I didn't go because I was thinking of getting into porn. I
Mhm.
went because I was working in the video game industry, and VR was the brand new hot thing at the time.
Yes. Yes.
And one of the girls I was hooking up with, she had a friend out in Vegas that was doing a startup VR porn company,
Hmm.
and they were looking for investors. And because VR was hot in the video game industry, I thought, hey, I have some money I'm sitting on. Maybe I could be an early investor in that company, but I should first do my due diligence and see what's going on in the world of VR and porn, and see if
Yeah.
it's picking up in porn the way it is picking up in the video game industry, or at least the buzz around it.
Mhm.
So I go to AVN, and I find out like every other major company is also chasing VR at the time, so it didn't make sense to throw my investment into the small startup company when they're going heads up against like all the major players, like
Yeah.
everybody who's a who's who was doing VR at the time. But out of pure luck, chance, and circumstance, I got put on the same floor as a bunch of performers.
Okay.
So I kept running into them in the hallways and the elevator and stuff like that. And some of them would flirt with me. They would see me around the floor. They would start, like be like, "Hey, you're really cute. We could use a performer. This and this." And so that, combined with my personal experience before, was kind of like, maybe there's something there about, like, if the performers want to work with me and the women are interested in seeing me, maybe there's something there for me. I did talk to an agent at the time, but I didn't take it seriously, so it wasn't real follow up. But by about 2019 is when I got completely just burnt out from the video game industry, got disillusioned with the corporate world and all that stuff. That's when I started making the game plan, started figuring things out, started doing all my due diligence, I got the LLC set up, started actually
Nice.
self-producing, went back to AVN 2020, and fantastic networking opportunities. That's a whole different story in itself.
Yeah.
And I came back, ready for the next chapter of my life. And then in like February is when I got laid off, and I wasn't even mad. I was like, great, you paid me to leave. That's what I wanted in the first place. I was just staying around to try to collect some more paychecks so I can build my war chest. So thank you. But then unfortunately, 2 years of COVID ate into that quite a lot. So the game plan didn't work out exactly as intended, but that's kind of how I got here, though.
I feel like the best laid plans, something's always gonna,
Right,
derail you. But I love the fact that you did your homework. So many people just jump into it without even researching it,
right,
making connections, contacts. And so I love that you were intentional.
right,
I
and
also can't
oh,
believe you're over 40, because when I
oh
talk
yeah,
to you, I'm like, you definitely don't qualify to be on here. And then, yeah, I was like, wow,
yeah,
you've,
no, it's
you've aged well, or not aged.
right, no, yeah, I turned 40 back in August, and just been. I like to think that I've been taking care of my body, and also not drinking alcohol definitely helps a lot too. So
It does. It does. Yeah, I think trying to stay as young looking in this business as possible is probably the best. So
right.
you moved to LA and you're stuck with COVID, but I'm sure you're making the best of it and trying to make your contacts, doing lots of solo content.
Yeah, yeah. I was doing a lot of photos and just kind of really building up the brand, and kind of like what you mentioned before, is because I spent so long doing the research, building the foundation, and understanding what my game plan was, understanding what my market was, understanding what my niche was, and just really setting the foundation for it. That when things opened up again, I was able to start connecting and shooting with top talent, and because I'd already laid out the foundation for things took off pretty quickly for me.
There you go.
And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't realize that, like, it only took off quickly because I did the work before. Back when I was a designer, I used to read a lot of like design magazines and like just stuff about for creatives. And one thing that always stuck with me is they would have all these people who were essentially considered overnight successes, and they were kind of saying like it takes about 3 years of nonstop dedicated hard work to become an overnight success.
Yeah.
And right. And so that's the part that like I feel like people when they saw me kind of have when I had my spotlight moment and I was getting a lot of attention and stuff like that, a lot of people didn't realize that like for about 3 years behind the scenes, slowly grinding, networking, figuring it out, laying the foundation. It takes about 3 years of hard work to become an overnight success.
Yeah. Did you get an agent then once COVID was over? Did that help catapult you into the pro scene?
No, I did get an agent, but I was already getting the spotlight before I dealt with before I connected with an agency. I'm with OC Modeling now. Sandra was great. She reached out to me because she saw me on Instagram, but by the time she reached out to me, I was already featured multiple times on Pornhub, nominated by them for their awards. I was already shooting with top people within the industry. I already had connections in the industry. So I was planning on going fully independent and just doing it all myself.
Yeah.
But the combination of again 2 years of lockdown and COVID in LA
Mhm.
really ate into my war chest. So my funds weren't as deep as they were before, and shooting with a lot of people who recommended Sandra and OC as agency.
So you mentioned figuring out your niche. Talk to us about what is your niche and what do you tend to lean into? Did you figure it out as you went, or were you methodical and knew exactly what you wanted to
Um,
do?
so I was methodical in trying to figure out the niche at the beginning, but again, like you said, the best laid plans get thrown out the window when reality hits, right? And for me, it was a lucky accident. So obviously, there's not a lot of Asian men in Western hetero adult entertainment. Just there's not a lot of there's not a lot of representation of Asian male heterosexuality in Western media. Period. Um, so me coming into this industry, one of the things I had going for me was like, okay, there's not a lot of Asian men doing this. I feel like I can corner the market for Asian men looking for a avatar that they can relate to while they watch the content. And so when I first got started, I was shooting content that was really focused on the women, but like obviously I'm not hiding my face, but it wasn't making me the center of the scene. It was just like it's an extra bonus for people to be able to, what's the word I'm looking for, to connect with me as an
Mm-hmm.
avatar, but I
Yeah.
wasn't the main focus of the content I was trying to shoot.
Mm-hmm.
But then I started putting the stuff on Pornhub, and every single comment, every single comment on there were women being like, "Hey, we can't see your face. We want to
Yeah,
see more of your face." Like,
exactly.
so once that happened, I started shifting a little bit more to be like to make the content a little bit not focused towards not like focused on me, but to share to make sure that I pull the frame back a little bit so that you can see more of me, you can see more of my body, you can see more of my face, that I'm kind of sharing the scene with my partner as
Yeah.
opposed to really focusing, emphasizing the partner and less on me. Um, and I did seem to build a pretty substantial female following. And the Asian guys still they support me and so forth, but like they're not a very loud vocal support group. But it turned out that the women were very loud vocal supporters of me. Um, so again, it was not exactly the niche I was expecting at first, but I'm not mad about it, right? And I still did get the niche of like Asian males who support my product and support what I'm doing and what my goals are. Um, so like that wasn't a completely lost attempt in the first place. It's just that it was a happy accident to find out that oh, I can also cater to a female fan base and be pretty successful at that.
Right, right. Well, and you talk about showing the face. I think it also depends on the age of your fans. So for me, my male fan base is 40 and older. And
Mm,
so they like the more sensual. They want to see it,
right.
they want to see the other person that I'm interacting with.
Right.
And so, obviously your fans were kind of telling you, we want to see who you are.
That and yeah, and also I another niche I was coming into was sort of making more intimate, sensual, romantic
Yes.
content.
Yes.
There's so much. I guess people's perception of what porn is this very kind of I don't want to say mainstream, but it's a very stereotypical, like it's hardcore, it's intense, it's this and this and so forth. And a lot of the stuff that I was enjoying watching, and when I was doing my research, found out a lot of people just thoroughly love was amateur content because it felt more intimate. It felt like there was chemistry between the performers. It felt more passionate. And sometimes, like, especially now that I know I'm working on mainstream sets,
Mhm.
sometimes there isn't chemistry. It's just the girl's there for the paycheck, the guy's there for the paycheck. You're both just told like, okay, go do the thing, and it's like you have a set time that you need to hit, and you're just kind of going through the motions. And sometimes, like, the stars align, and you can have two performers that have an amazing scene with no chemistry, but it's just two great performers. And sometimes it's just two people that's like, we're just getting through the motions. Okay, how much more time do we have left? Okay, like let's move on. So I really wanted to I guess it was sort of the amateur feel of intimacy and passion, but
Mhm.
with much more professional, or at least like pro am level of like lighting and camera angles,
Yes.
right? Um,
Yes.
my complaint with a lot of the amateur stuff was like, okay, the girl's super hot, but I saw like 2 seconds of her face, and the rest of it's grainy in the dark, like iPhone footage of just back shots. You know what I mean?
Right. 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 And some people like that, but
Right, right.
your style is exactly my style, which is so
Okay.
exciting because we've never talked about it. It's like,
Right.
yeah, I love to have at least some kind of connection with my scene partner, even
Yeah.
on set, you know. So yeah, I enjoy that because I've had scenes where I've had zero connection. And you
Right.
know what? Yes, there you can be a great actor, but your true super fans can tell.
Right.
If they're watching all your content, they're going to know. I love that. And so, as your career progressed, do you feel like you were shooting more studio stuff or more like collab type?
Um, in the early days, I was shooting. It's always definitely more collab because that's just sort of my mentality. Is the best thing you should do is think of this in the long term, and the long term is the more content that you have ownership over, the better the longevity because you can monetize that forever, or as long as the other person. If you're being respectful, as long as the other person allows you to monetize it as
That's
well,
right.
because it's
That's
like I don't
right.
want to be a dick and be like, hey, like you're out of the game, you want your stuff gone, but I'm like, well, I'm still making money off this, so you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Um, but with that being said, in the early days when I was getting the spotlight because the nominations, and I was like making a real name for myself, I was getting a ton of studio opportunities. Also, unfortunately, right at the same time when I got my 15 minutes of fame
Mhm.
and spotlight, I had an extremely bad back injury.
Oh
Um,
no.
yeah, so I wasn't. That's one of my big regrets. I guess not. I don't know if regrets the right word, but
Mhm.
I wasn't able to capitalize on my spotlight moment as much as I would have liked to, because right at the time when I was getting my Pornhub awards, when I was getting opportunities to shoot for studios and all this stuff, I
Yeah.
sprained my back. And
Mm.
then because I was getting these opportunities, instead of icing and resting, I was putting heat on my back so I could keep performing. And
Right.
that led to so much swelling that caused a herniated disc in my spine to bulge out, and that bulge was touching my sciatic nerve. So for it was the beginning of 18 months of constant sciatica issue. I was in nonstop pain for 18 months. And that obviously affected how I was able to
Yeah.
perform, how I was able to
Yeah.
perform on set, what I can and can't do. So while I had a ton of opportunities to work for a ton of great studios,
Mhm.
I wasn't called back afterward because I feel it's like I was getting through the day. I did the checklist of a scene, but I was giving maybe like a C plus performance at best because I'm operating extremely injured, but at the same time, like just coming right off of COVID, it's like I need the money, and also it's an opportunity for me to go try to perform.
Yeah.
Um, so I did get lucky in the sense that I did land in good favors with some top directors and some top
Mhm.
studios.
Good.
And some of the studios that I shot for before, great. I'm very grateful for the opportunity, but it's really not my style in the first place.
Yeah.
So So where I'm currently at in my career now is I'm not getting as much studio work as I did before, but I am getting high quality work with high quality production studios and directors that I really do like working with.
That's
And again,
awesome.
because my mentality has always been focused on the long term,
Yeah.
I just spend my time shooting content and stacking up that catalog of stuff that I can monetize myself for a long time. Because we don't get royalties in this industry, so
I know. That's the old days of
right.
Vivid and the Contract Girls. But so, what site is your most successful? Is it Pornhub?
It used to be. I've taken a little hiatus and break from Pornhub. Mostly just because once we got into, I was putting a ton of stuff on there because I was producing the content myself. So having full
Yeah.
ownership, I didn't feel bad about putting like a 14, 15 minute version of the scene on there.
Yeah.
Once I transitioned to shooting just content trades with people, I started feeling guilty because a 14, 15 minute scene is now like half of the entire scene. And so I started feeling this like immense guilt about trying to put that much of a scene that's
Yeah.
shared content between the two of us up, right?
Right.
So I took a huge step back from Pornhub. Right now it's mostly just my OnlyFans plus studio work that's keeping me afloat. 2026, I do plan to get back into Pornhub. I'm just and I've had multiple different strategies and game plans of like what to do to release content on Pornhub that I feel like is respectful of both me and my content partner.
Yeah.
But I just still haven't really quite nailed it, executed it, and definitely cleared it with the partners. But moving up for 2026 is something that I will start talking to my scene partners about before, and that way, like make sure we're both on the same page, and also alleviate some of that internal guilt I have about putting up such a long scene because like that's how the algorithm works, right? Like you're not going to get featured if you're putting a 5 minute scene and so forth. So you got to be at least like minimum 10, but 14 is kind of like a good spot of like stand out from the crowd a little bit, let people know that like this is worth watching a little bit.
I know. And it's okay. So the whole Pornhub thing, as a scene partner, I have never allowed a full scene to be put up
Right,
there. Like, I'm just like, oh, hell no, they need to have something to buy.
right.
However, once you start shooting for studios, which I started in the last couple of years, they put your everywhere. And they,
Yes.
eventually, like, they pretty much put the whole thing up there. So yeah, I would love to have more conversations about that with you at some point. Doesn't have to be on the podcast, but like,
Right.
where is the medium balance, because what is the monetization on there? It has to be 10 minutes, 7 minutes.
I think, yeah, for just to qualify for monetization is somewhere around the 10-minute mark. But again, like that, exactly. And so one of my strategies moving forward is it's both because I want to start doing a different type of creative content, because the content I shoot is based on intimacy and romance, like intimacy, passion, romance, but it's still kind of a gonzo style, right? Like there's no storyline. It's just two attractive people with nice lighting and like like good camera angles. But I do still have that filmmaker in me that wants to tell stories, that wants to create something. And I do think I think the hottest, most erotic stories are things very grounded in reality, right? Um, and so I don't think there's enough of that happening within the industry itself, or like, because there's a lot of reasons why it's not happening, and part of it is just like it takes a lot of time. That takes some chemistry between performers, stuff that we don't necessarily work out beforehand, and also budgets. I'm not saying that like I have a massive budget. I'm just saying like if you have the amount of time to figure out the creativity of it, you could do it without the budget. Um, with that being said, one of the things I want to do moving forward next year is people that I've already shot with maybe once, twice, and so forth. We're at round 3 at this point or something like that.
Right, right.
You can only have sex so many ways to keep it interesting.
Yeah.
But like I would love to see if they would be interested in doing more storyline role play stuff, start kind of filming out more long form stories and kind of really stretching the story part of it, not just to fill the time, but to like world build.
Yeah.
And then that would be kind of like how we get that on Pornhub, where it's just like 10 minutes of story building, 10 minutes of world building of the building up why these two people are about to have sex, 5 minutes of like sex clips. And then I feel like, yeah, that's that's great, because then the full scene is still going to be like 30 minutes of actual sex, and you got a small taste of it versus
Yeah.
giving you 15 minutes of sex of a gonzo scene. That's like, yeah, like this is 30 minutes of sex, but you've seen the position, like you've seen the stuff, like.
Right, right, right. My thing has always been my scene partners. I don't want POV of my holes for free.
Mhm.
So yes. Oh, I love what you're doing. I'm so in agreement with you on that. Absolutely. So you mentioned 2026. Elaborate a little more on that. So you want to build up more of the sensual part of it, and I am so there for that. That is amazing.
Right. I think there's a couple different game plans. So because of the back injury, and that was a few years ago, but it's hard. It's hard to just recover from something like that, because during that time, being injured nonstop for 18 months, and then during that time, I caught COVID twice and had really bad long COVID complications, and there was so many health issues that once my back stopped hurting, it didn't. That wasn't the end of, that wasn't like me going right back to
Right,
normal. The
right.
road to recovery has been a long time. So part of the reason why I took a step back from Pornhub, part of the reason that I took a step back from a lot of things, like was just mental and physical and emotional recovery from that traumatic injury and time period in my life. When I first got into the industry, I was about 185 pounds. Uh, I weighed myself at one point after the back injury. I dropped down to about 155 pounds. I
Oh,
lost about 30 pounds of just solid muscle.
yeah.
So and the reason I'm giving you all this to talk about 2026 is there's a lot of, I'm finally feeling healthy. I'm finally feeling in a good mental place and good emotional place after all that had occurred, that I am able to now really focus on work and as a performer and performing. So not only do I want to start doing storylines and sort of like, and it's not going to be, at least once a month I would like to tell one kind of like storyline story, but I also haven't. I'm also working on creating a new, getting more into kind of BDSM type content as well. Because I bought new sheets. I got new lighting for the bed. There's a whole thing where I want to do where it's like because the stuff that I do right now, I use a lot of natural lighting, and it's like, I got my white sheets, natural lighting. Everything looks very. I like to, the way in my head I like to imagine it is that it's very sort of like uh elegant and very. Oh, I'm drawing a blank on the correct way to
Crisp,
describe.
maybe
Yeah,
clean.
I guess it's sort of like it's something that's very that seems sensual, right? Like passionate, like sensual. That's very like, okay, it's natural. And I'm working on a thing where I can try to black out all the windows so it's like darker in my place. Have colored lighting to kind of change the mood a little bit. I bought complete black sheets and stuff, so it's a different vibe. And then have that be more of like a, and get into a little bit more like BDSM type territory, and just sort of like, because right now what I do is, I start off just in boxers, the girls in lingerie, but I would love something where it's like where I do something like that, change the entire mood, more of a spotlight type situation, colored lighting, and then I'm like in a suit and the girls in like a nice black dress, and then we can explore a little more BDSM type stuff going on
And
there.
blindfold her and do
Exactly,
all the
like
sensory things. Sign me up. No.
right. A little more emphasis on the spanking, a little
Yeah.
more like maybe some cuffs, things like that, and just sort of
Sounds like
like
50 Shades of Leo, if you ask
right,
me.
right. Oh, and again, it's not something I would ever want to do with somebody on the first time I shoot with them.
Yeah,
I would still like to keep my
absolutely.
traditional style, because you can only capture the first time, right?
That's right.
And so, like, I want to capture the authenticity of the intimacy and passion of two people that want to work with each other for the first time, capturing that. But when it gets to round two, round three, it's like, hey, would you be interested? Are you comfortable enough with me at this point to
Yeah,
do this with me?
yeah.
Would you be down to do this? And let's, that way we can continue working together, but have content that looks new for our fans.
Sure,
Because
sure.
again, like there's only so many ways that you can have sex, like without it getting really seeming forced, you know?
Right, right. Oh, that sounds so exciting. I love it. I love it. I can't wait to see what you come up with. I'll definitely be following.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Who would you say has been your biggest influence in this industry? Somebody that you looked at or even mentored you? Any? Anybody that
A huge influence before I got started in this industry, and then still to this day, is definitely Owen Gray. Seeing a guy who's able to do his own productions, make a name for himself, have a huge female fan base, and just create a very sensual, intimate, passionate sort of sex, and seeing that there is a market for that, that there is a fan base for that, was definitely a huge inspiration. And I'm still a huge fan of all of his work, with that, like same thing with Small Hands, and just a lot of the guys who were able to create a niche for themselves by being like more passionate than hardcore. I don't know if that, like, the distinction
yeah, it
makes
makes
sense, but
sense.
like,
Yeah,
right.
makes
And
total sense.
and there's nothing wrong with people who are doing hardcore stuff, but it's just like, this was, those people stood out to me. And now that I'm in the industry and I get to meet a lot of people and just talk to them and get to know people more on a personal level, there's definitely a lot of performers now that I highly respect, and I do take influence from what they do and how they do things. Lucas Frost is one.
Yeah.
Cody Steele is another one.
Mhm.
Um, uh, Even somebody like just hearing the story of like Alex Jones or Nay Nasty and finding out
Yeah.
like their journey, like most people see them popping off and they're like, oh wow, like they're one of the lucky ones. But to find out how long the grind was for them to finally get their moment, it's huge. I don't know if inspiration is the word, but it's definitely, it's a constant reminder to me that it's like, hey, like I might not have been able to capitalize on my 15 minutes when I had it then, but you put in the work, you put in the effort, you'll get another chance to shine. Like time, like it it's a for male performers in this industry, it's sort of a game of longevity. If you can last long enough, then you start getting more shine, right?
Yeah, I think it's for any performer in this industry, like, yeah,
Well,
definitely.
it is, but I think women have there's a weird trajectory for women performers, right? It's like when you're new, you're the new shiny like thing. So there's tons of studios that are out that are specifically shooting new girls. So like when you're brand new as a female talent, you get tons of work. But the hard part for female talent is standing out from the crowd and keeping that longevity after the first year or two, right? Like,
That's true,
um,
that's true.
and then like if you survive that first year or two, you stand out from the crowd and you keep getting work, then your career just keeps going upwards because like you've made it into that realm of like talent pool that's like, oh, this is a reliable, trustworthy person, the fans like it, we can keep booking them. But as a male performer, your trajectory is the opposite. The first year or two, nobody wants to give you a chance because it's like, yo, if you don't function, nobody gets paid. So why are we going to risk an entire production around you if you haven't proven yourself to be worthwhile of putting production around you? So a lot of new talent, like they start off the first year or two just doing like gangbangs and stuff because it's like, hey, if you don't work, step into the background, just disappear into the crowd. We didn't put an entire production around you. You're just one of the many guys. And we have a couple of solid, like, veteran performers that are going to anchor down this gangbang. So it's like low risk to try new talent for things like that.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true, that's
I was
true.
really fortunate that I skipped the entire gangbang circuit. Because like I had created a name for myself before doing studio work, so they
Yeah,
felt like
yeah.
okay, this guy, it's not as big of a risk to put a production behind him.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, if you do as a male talent, you survive the gangbang circuit, you survive a couple years, and people start feeling like they can trust a full production with you being the anchor. Then you start getting work, and then you start doing that more consistently. Then you start getting a lot more work.
yeah. I'm chuckling because 2026 is the year of my gangbang. I've never done
Okay.
when you said that younger performance, I'm like, "Yep, I got my list going."
Right.
All right, as we close out, tell everyone where they can find your amazing content.
You can find me on OnlyFans, onlyfans.com/the Lion Emperor.
Oh,
And
see, I'm glad I asked you.
yeah.
Hawaiian Emperor. I'm gonna make it
And yeah, no, and that's me on most social media handles. It's the Lion Emperor on Twitter. I On Instagram, on Twitter, on Reddit, things like that. On Instagram, it's the Lion Emperor, but there's the underscores between the words, right? The underscore Lion underscore Emperor. And just I like to kind of clarify sometimes because I'm a little self-conscious that people think that I take myself very seriously when I use the moniker the Lion Emperor on my social media handles. but it all originated from Reddit because I used to post thirst traps on the Asian lady boner subreddit,
Oh,
and
I
I
love it.
created a throwaway account. And the Lion Emperor is a very like, because you know how different social media apps have different naming conventions that make sense for that social media app.
Right, right.
For Reddit, it's a very Reddit-y kind of username thing, and it's really just a play on the Lion King, but like the Asian version, because we don't have kings in China, we have emperors.
There you
So
go.
so yeah, I gave myself that moniker just mostly out of like a joke, a throwaway account and a joke.
I love it.
But this sort of just out of branding consistency, I kept it across the board. And every once in a while, I wonder if like, do people think that I take myself very seriously? Like,
I
because I
love
don't.
it. And this business is all about having something catchy,
Right.
that's going to draw their attention. But thank you so much for making the time to be on. I can't wait to see what you've got going for 2026, and I loved getting to know you more.
Yeah, no. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you. And yeah, no, I would love to ever do this again if you'd want me to.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, excited to see what
Absolutely.
2026 has in store for all of us. Really.
Right? Oh my gosh, for sure. Well, thank you so much, Leo. I appreciate it.
No, of course, my pleasure.